Are y'all familiar with the term clickbait? You see, when you're on the internet studying the Bible, of course, and you see a link to an article that says something like, wait till you see what she looks like now, or doctors don't want you to know this secret weight loss technique. But then you click on it and you find you end up in a very different place than you expected to be. Yeah, that's clickbait. And when we read through Mark 13, 1 through 13 with fresh eyes, I kind of felt like Jesus clickbaited his disciples. Let me explain what I mean. So in verses 1 and 2, they came out of the temple and one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what wonderful stones and what wonderful buildings." And then Jesus said to him, "Do you see these great buildings? There will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down." And then they leave Jerusalem and they get out to the Mount of Olives, and Peter and James and John and Andrew, right? Like the secret contingent asked him privately. They're like, "Hey, Jesus," verse 4, "tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when all these things are about to be accomplished?" Now look, these four guys, they asked him a very specific question. Tell us when this is going to happen. And Jesus' response in verse 5, "See to it that no one leads you astray." Seems like clickbait to me, right? They're asking when. They're worried about the details, and Jesus says, "Hey, I'm concerned that your focus on when could possibly lead you astray." So in verses 6 through 8, if you read through it, he answers their question just a little bit, just to kind of keep their interest, and then bang! In verse 9, he says, but he says this, "Be on your guard." And why? There's that word "for" again, meaning because. This is the reason why. Be on your guard, because they will deliver you over to the councils, and you will be beaten in synagogues, and you will stand before governors and kings for my sake to bear witness before them. And the gospel must first be proclaimed to all nations. And so the disciples look at Jesus and they say, "Hey, when is this going to take place?" And Jesus says, "Listen, when is the wrong question. The question you should be asking is how. How should you live when this happens? When the worst thing you can imagine happens, how do you live then?" And Jesus says, "You be on guard, and you declare the good news of the kingdom. When everything is shaken, when the thing you hold most as most secure is gone, stay on your guard and speak the gospel, because the one sign that he does is that when this is going to take place, the gospel must first be proclaimed to all nations." You see, you're wondering when I will rule, meaning when Rome will be defeated. You're wondering when I will be on a throne and you will be victorious and comfortable. But first, stand firm and get to work declaring the good news. But don't worry, because in verse 11, he offers a little bit of relief, and he says, "And when they bring you to trial and deliver you over," that's not the comfort yet. "Don't be anxious beforehand what you are to say, but say whatever is given to you in that hour." You're called to be his witness, to declare the good news, but don't worry about how. Just stay connected to the Holy Spirit, because it is not you who speak, but the Holy Spirit. And so the crazy thing is that we're worried about when Jesus is more worried about how we're going to live. He recognizes that culture is going to come against us, and he calls us to do two things: to be on guard and to speak the gospel faithfully. So the question isn't when will all this happen, but will you be able to stand when things get difficult? And tomorrow, we're going to see that Mark, our author, I love this. He has a fairly clear idea when all this stuff will happen. And we're going to look at it tomorrow. So I hope you come back.